Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, thank you for joining us again for this episode. And I wanted to start out and just say a big, huge thank you. There's some great people who've really helped out. I'm doing some work up in Vacaville, California, and it's an underserved community where people are really struggling financially and health-wise. We're seeing an epidemic of diabetes and health problems that are devastating, right? So, when I saw their break room up at this company, Vacaville Fruit Company, a little shout out to them because they care about their employees and they're helping. I'm not sponsored by them, but I'm consulting with them right now, trying to help out. I felt overwhelmed, and so I looked at their break room, and and I couldn't believe it. Everything was garbage food. So these people who work hard all day and are sleep deprived and stressed, they're not getting good nutrition. So people are calling it sick. You start having other health problems, losing people to diabetes complications. And so the owner of the company reached out to me and said, hey, I don't care what it costs. I want to help these people. They got them continuous glucose monitors. They paid for labs and for them to go through my program. And, I reached out to some people in the community and said, hey, can we help? Because it takes a community. So who responded? Health Code. Dr. Ben Bickman, who's a hero of mine, said, hey, well, how can I help? I can lecture, I can come and do whatever, let's get them some product and see what they can do. So Health Code Shakes helped out. Rosette's, who's the wife of my partner on the Low Carb MD podcast, she said, let me send some snack, low carb snacks, cake mix where they could celebrate birthdays and have cookies and things like that. And of course, my sponsor here is Simply Snacking. Very proud. She sent them a ton of samples, and I'm seeing their continuous glucose monitors staying flat. I'm seeing sugars go from 246 down to less than 100 consistently. And so I just wanted to give a shout out. I'm only sponsored by Simply Snacking, but everyone else jumped in to help. Ben Bakikio, 15 Minutes to Fitness, he jumped in and said, hey, I'll lecture them on exercise. I really want to help. So what I'm saying is all these great people are coming out of the woodwork and wanting to help a community. And that's what it's going to take. We have to invest in other people. And that's what this podcast is about. And I feel very passionate about that, and I'm proud of these companies. And I want you to support these companies because they're giving, they're helping, they're like-minded. Sue at Simply Snack and I talked to her and said, look, this is a small podcast. We're just getting it off the ground. It's going to be a net loss for you probably for a while, right? And she says, I believe in your cause. I believe in helping people. And so when you're combined with people like this, you can't fail. So I just want to give a shout out to those companies. They didn't do it for me to talk on the podcast. No one even mentioned it. They said, how can I help? And I think if more of us are like that, we're going to be successful. We're going to do better, and we're going to help more people. So thank you for listening, and thank you for your continued support. Hello and welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. I have another doc here, Elie Jarrouge. I know I'm going to butcher your last name, but I think that's how I heard you say it before. Man, you trained at Baylor. You're from Lebanon originally, right? Your family background, and then you trained at Baylor, and then you did nephrology, internal medicine, right?
Correct.
And now you're a hospitalist. So, I thought we could get together and talk about what matters in life and some of the other stuff besides just what we're eating. Like, what are you seeing now in the hospital? What brought you to let's start at the beginning. Like when did you first realize you were going to be a doc, and what brought you into that? And then also on top of that, were you ever disillusioned and saying, what the heck are we doing here?
I wish I was still ignorant, blissfully ignorant, before I discovered all the metabolic stuff. It was nice to just not think about it and blame it on the patient. But I realized I wanted to be a doctor before I even realized it. It's like I was 8 years old. I grew up in a family where my grandparents lived with us, and they were sick in an older age. And the doctor used to make house calls. And at that time, I would be fascinated because he would examine my grandma, prescribe some medications, even like administer some stuff at home, and she would feel better. So I used to collect these clean syringes and tubing and things like that, and play doctor. And I even learned how to take a manual blood pressure well, there was no digital at that time, but early 90s, it was manual. So I learned how to do it. And my grandmother would come to me every day to check her blood pressure because I had high blood pressure. So I would just do it. And I got good at it, even at 8. And so my parents would call me doc, and doctor, here's the doctor, here's the doctor. So I don't know if it printed in my mind or I always wanted it. So I never really considered anything else. I feel lucky in that way.
Wow, that's cool, man. And then just
So
seeing the doc come to the house and kind of
yeah,
seeing what they do and go, this is kind of cool, like helping
yeah.
people.
So yeah, I went on a journey. I can go into it as much as you want, but uh, so basically, growing up in Lebanon, I mean, everybody is close knit, and everybody is encouraging and all. But as I grew up, and I grew up at the end of the war, civil war, but I was too young to remember a lot of things. So the 90s was this like nice period in time. Then in late 90s, we got the option to immigrate to the US. Back in the Civil War, my uncle filed petition for us to come, but we forgot about it. And 10 years later, it came through. And I was right, like I had one more year of high school. So I decided to pack my bags and move here. My parents had a big push. My dad didn't see the future. I mean, didn't see a future in Lebanon, like knowing the economy and all that stuff. So he kind of pushed us to go. So ended up coming here, did undergrad and made it to medical school and all that stuff. And then ended up in Houston eventually.
Wow, so you did it on your own basically. Like you were here with brothers and sisters and stuff like that?
Yeah, so yes, right now it's nice. I mean, it's easy to forget the hard work, but when we came, I mean, it's a culture shock. I was 17. I had, we were 4 siblings at the time, and we came and we had to work. My dad had limited means. All he could do for us is support us and buy us tickets. And when we got here, we had to make it work. We stayed with cousins, stayed with my brother. We worked several jobs just to kind of make ends meet in undergrad, financial aid and all that stuff, trying not to collect loans. So I worked between like window shades, these window blinds you make. I would make them. I would get paid $4 at 25 cents an hour. I also tutored in college because in Lebanon, when you do high school there, it's much more advanced at college level when you talk about math and physics and things like that. So when I was doing freshman year, it was more just doing the same stuff that I knew from high school, but in English. So it was nice. So I was tutoring as also another side job just to make ends meet.
And were you speaking English there already before you came, or did you have to learn the language also?
So I'm French educated more, but I knew English from, we had courses. So I knew grammar but I wasn't fluent. I couldn't kind of think and talk fluently. So, but that was first year was tough, trying to express myself. So I would, struggle or use weird words, but you learn.
And you did your undergrad in New York and Buffalo, right?
So
was that a
in
culture
New York
shock?
City initially. I was in
that had to
Staten
be
Island, between Brooklyn and Staten Island.
that had to be a crazy transition.
The nice thing about New York City, you'll fit in no matter who you are. It's a melting pot. So we had some family support there and did undergrad there, taking the bus, and it was nice when you're broke. You can live in New York City because you just hop on the bus or the train and you get anywhere you want.
That's so fit for you being a new immigrant to the country and everything.
Yeah.
So then you go to med school. How was your experience in med school?
It's a blur. It's weird, but I kind of like med school. So I moved. Well, Buffalo was nice because ski, like snow belt. So it was an opportunity to ski all the time. So I had a group of friends in college where we go night skiing sometimes and day skiing. So anytime we had time off, we just ski. And nature is pretty in the summer. And I did my best in medical school. I had a hard time getting into medical school because one, my MCATs with the English part, it's just not something you can study for. I can,
Yeah.
physics and chemistry and stuff I did well, but English, I really bombed it. So at the time, I applied to like 30 medical schools to get 3 interviews and 1 acceptance, which all I needed. So I was dancing on the street at the time, but luckily I was so determined that it was the other way around at the end. So medical school was nice. I was determined. I was very disciplined, goal oriented, and eventually I had a lot of options. So for residency, I applied everywhere and I was getting interviews everywhere, unlike medical school. So I felt a little bit more confident with my skills in English.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, that's scary. I know. I remember those days like, oh, where am I going to end up? For me, it was either Chicago or USC. And I was like, oh, I want to stay on the West Coast for me, you know? So I actually took a year off in between. I took a year off and helped my dad with his company and did some research and all that kind of stuff. And it was a good year. It was a good year to step back and kind of reassess, go, is this really what you want to do? And then I ended up
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
married and everything it was a perfect thing to happen in retrospect, even though at the time I had to turn down going back east. I thought, you know what, I I think I'll get in, and then I got in everywhere. The next year was it was just a weird year. I don't know what happened, but it's good
It's
to be
nice
in
to
and
have.
then work hard and get through and all that kind of stuff. Then you do your residency, and then how did you start learning about metabolic health type stuff, or the importance of it?
Um, 2000. So in my late 20s, I've always had like chronic backache. Nothing really. I always attributed to being tired and walking around all day. Then my weight started climbing in medical school and residency. Blood pressure started going up. So I was in my 20s. My blood pressure was in the 140s, which I didn't like because my dad had hypertension, high blood pressure in his 30s and on medications. Then one day I was at the mall trying pants on and my back gave out. I had a back spasm. At the time, didn't make any connections. So I was miserable for 2 weeks. I'll be on the ground. And then for the next year, every month or two, I would just have a flare up. I tried to get healthier. I tried to exercise. I tried to do yoga, anything like that. I just would give out and be miserable. Energy low, all that stuff. So I was, told, what about your nutrition? Maybe it's your nutrition. I was like, what are you talking about? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, so I went to physical therapists and rehab doctors and had MRIs and all that stuff. Everything checked out okay. Just learn some exercises, do things, and you get better. You feel a little bit better, then it comes back. And then one time I was just so miserable. I was like, F it. I have to do something about it. So at the time, the Whole30 was popular and paleo was like a big movement. So I tried it. I read the book Starts with Food, Melissa Hardwick, for the Whole30 program. I like the concept of psychology of food and trying to stay away from sugar and all that stuff. So just did it as an experiment. 30 days later, I was down 15 pounds and my back was 80% better. And it's this light bulb went off. I was like, what is this about? Because until that point, I was making fun of nutrition and think people gain weight because they eat more
Eat
or they
more
don't
and
move as
exercise
much.
less. Yeah, and that's the thing
Uh,
is when you experience it, say, wait, I'm doing those things. I'm working out. I'm taking care of myself, and I'm gaining weight. So yeah, and it's amazing. I'm telling you that. As a matter of fact, it's funny when you're telling the story because one day a friend of mine called me and goes, I hate your diet. And he hung up. And they said, hey, some patient's mad at you or something. And I realized it was my buddy. When I heard his voice, I was like, oh. So I call him, I go, what do you mean? He goes, I go, why do you hate it? And he goes, because it works. And I
you
said,
know?
what? And so basically he was having chronic back pain and hip pain and he was limping around. His wife said, that's it. We're cutting your processed foods. And then all of a sudden his back didn't hurt. And he said, there's no way this is working. And then, so he promised her he'd do it for a month and one day. He said, forget it, man. He went back to his sodas and chips and all that stuff. He said the next morning he woke up and he couldn't move. And he said, you got to be kidding me. And he was upset because he was trying to hide it from his wife. And she figured out, like, you're eating carbs, aren't you? And he said, yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. And then he called me, he was mad because he couldn't eat the food he liked anymore, you know?
You don't want to believe it. And people think you're crazy when you say it because it doesn't really make sense, I guess, for when you first look at it. Why would my back pain has anything to do with my food? But it does. I think inflammation, all a bunch of stuff that's going on. So I extended it another month at the time, whole 30, and I lost another 5 pounds. So that was like
Wow.
20 pounds.
20 pounds.
20
Yeah,
pounds.
that's a
Oh,
lot.
and I was, yeah, great. I can stop now. I can go back to my old life. So I went back to eating, the usual junk food because I like my carbs. And then I had another flare up of my back spasm, another episode. That was a pretty bad one. So I was like, okay, so I can't just do that. So I went paleo more. And then at that time, when you start reading, things start showing up in your feeds and Google search. I started hearing about something called keto, which scared me initially. What does that mean? Like all fat, I was treating a lot of DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis in the hospitals. Like, how does that make any sense? Why would I want to be in that? But the more I read about it, the more I had an itch to try it. And this is when I started, learning about Gary Tubbs and, Jason Fung and all those. This just started showing up. And I started reading. I think the first book I read was How We Get Fat or something like that by
Yeah, yeah,
Gary
me
Tubbs.
too. Yeah, exactly. Gary
And that
Taubes.
was it's like I can't ignore it anymore. So I did keto 3 years ago or so. I did it for 3 months straight. I lost another 10 pounds. I was like, I was so energetic and so happy and zero back pain. I was just feeling great. Um, so I kept doing that for 3 months. Then I decided, well, the reason I had to change because I was getting a rash from the keto. I was like, I think overzealous with my ketosis. I was getting into deep ketosis and checking my ketones every day and all that stuff. But then I started having this keto rash, which not a lot of people have it, but I kept having it. I kept trying different things. Eventually, I just couldn't tolerate it. So I had to listen to my body, and I was asking people. I was this at Metabolic Health Summit. I went once out of curiosity in California, and I was chatting with some people, and this guy told me, "You're probably not eating enough protein." I was like, "True," because I'm just eating fat most of it, and
Wow. Yeah, so you went on the high fat version of it.
yeah, I was the traditional keto. I was just winging it. I don't know. I was just
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
things.
It's seeing what works. Yeah, that's what everyone says to do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, at that time I'm just fly on the wall. I had Twitter, but I just never post anything. I just read. Eventually, I mean, I discovered you and Tro and Sean Baker and PD Mangan and all these people. Just kind of start slowly following all these people and just absorbing you guys' experience and other people. And so bits and pieces from everywhere. So keto was great, but there was something wrong with the way I was doing it. Then the protein came to mind. So I started increasing the protein. So the rash went away. I wasn't as deep in ketosis, but the rash went away. So, and then I started realizing the more meat I ate, the better I felt. I was starting to see progress in my body composition that I liked. And then came across Ted and the PE diet
Yeah,
and
Ted
all that stuff.
Naiman.
I was
Yeah.
very intrigued. I read his book, and it really made a lot of sense in a lot of things. And I mean, things you agree with, things you don't agree with, but at the end of the day, I think there was a lot of value from that. So I started eating a lot more protein, lowered my fat, and kept the carbs low, and it was a completely new body composition that I developed. And this is when I became, I guess, disciple. I was like, I can't just keep it to myself. So, so I felt ready after a couple of years to dive into this and start giving advice. So it started in a hospital because I get all the sickest of
Well,
the sick.
I'll tell you this, and I don't know if you remember. I'm sure you remember this, but the way we cross paths is, I always see you putting positive stuff and like being appreciative
I
and
mean,
kind and all that stuff. Like, I love this guy. And then you said something about saying, God, at the very beginning of COVID, you said,
yes,
hey, I'm seeing all these obese diabetic patients and they're totally a disaster in the hospital. Why don't we focus on this? And then you got attacked they were saying you were fat shaming people. You were saying, no, I'm
yeah,
just a hospitalist and this is what I'm seeing. This is who's getting sick. So I would love you to maybe touch base on that because you were absolutely
yes.
right. And I kind of jumped in and said, this doc's right. That's exactly what we're seeing. And lo and behold, a year and a half later, they're saying, oh, guess what? These are the risk factors.
Yeah, exactly. So right before that, I was starting to, see the people with diabetes, with limb problems, dialysis, and heart conditions, and liver stuff. So I started kind of giving advice on, because my time is free. Like, I have 12 hours, but I'm not like, I don't have an appointment with my patients. So I do my work, then I go back and spend time with them to educate them. When COVID hit, I was one of the few big early hospitalists who jumped in, volunteered, because everybody was scared of it. It's like, look, I don't have kids, I live alone, I'm fine. If I get COVID, I'll deal with it. Let me just I'll be one of the first to see these patients. So we start seeing them, and initially you're nervous, apprehensive, but then you get comfortable and you start seeing a pattern. And the pattern at the time is young, middle-aged. All they have is, healthy, except looking at them, they're not metabolically healthy despite normal labs. But diabetes, obesity was the main one. And this is around the time where I started to tweet. So I'm still kind of trying to find my way, and got attacked, viciously. But I realized it wasn't about me. So I just tried to stay away from debating people who don't not interested.
Yeah, and it's hard because when you see something, and I think that's one thing we've lost in medicine is Tro and I were observing stuff in our practice and saying, I'm seeing this. And then we would say what we're seeing, and then people get mad at us for seeing what we're seeing. I was like, this is what's happening. Because it sounds crazy when we start saying, hey, people's knee pain and back pain is getting better, their anxiety is getting better, they're sleeping better, their mood's better, their relationships are better. Everything's better. They say they're not hungry as much as they used to be. And when we're saying this, and people say, that's not true. It's like,
Oh, what's your reference, or what is your proof?
yeah, show us a
This drives me
randomized
crazy.
control.
Every time people ask me for a paper to prove something I'm seeing, I'm like, are you serious? Like, I'm telling you what I'm seeing. Who cares what? I mean, I can find a paper that supports any, argument you want. So I don't even try. I have tried to read all these papers and
Yeah,
critique them.
exactly. Tro reads them all, man. He knows all this stuff, and so it's
you
good.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. So but I think it's good. You made an observation. You say, hey, here's what I'm saying. Had we have listened back then, a lot of lives could be saved because we're seeing people turn around their metabolic health very quickly. And I'm sure on Low Carb
yeah.
MD, when we have you on after this, we'll be talking more about that. But let's talk more about like the personal stuff. Like, you seem very appreciative in life. You focus on the positive, and I think that's one thing. Being a doctor for now 20 plus years, seeing people seem to do better when they have a good attitude, when they're enjoying life and things like that, rather than just worrying about ketones and worry about what they're eating every
Yeah.
single day. So what do you say about that?
Uh, it's an evolution for me. Obviously, we all have tragedies in our lives, and there are some tragedies in life that make you realize that there are more important things. Life is not forever. Everything ends at and sometimes sooner than later. My sister died in a car accident in 2003, and that was a very hard time. I was 21; she was 23. And I was in the middle of applying to medical school. So I was finishing undergrad. Actually, it was fast, so I finished my undergrad a semester early. So I had a semester buffer, equivalent of your year off. So I thought I would do something fun and go travel and do something before medical school. Well, life had other plans for me. So December, like right around finals, she was going to her first day of work in Lebanon, and she got T-boned, and that was it. Uh, life stolen, and
Wow.
you see your parents, and the parents are not supposed to die before. Sorry, kids are not supposed to die before their parents, and and you kind of get crushed, So never seen my parents cry or be in such a weak spot. So that kind of made me kind of grow up very quickly in that sense, and realize that we're petty, we just fight about things, and but your loved ones may disappear one day. So that kind of I'm already kind of in trouble. I don't like trouble. I don't like arguments and things like that. But it made me even more, distant from that. I just don't find value in that. So that was a big deal. And growing up too, my mom was a caretaker for my grandparents, not even her parents, my dad's parents, and see them through illness and, stroke and heart attack. So So there's a lot of stuff that happen, and you just have to cope. And then it either breaks you or makes you more, I guess, appreciate the small stuff more. So, and that helped me in connect with patients more. I mean, they tell me I have good bedside manners because a lot of times I don't focus on the disease. I just talk to them as people, that's my issue with consultants. They go into the heart and the GI and things like that. And then how about the whole picture? Talk to them.
Yeah. Sometimes we miss that. Sometimes we miss that there's a patient there, not just a diagnosis, right? I mean, that's what happens. That's why I was thinking, wow, this is a great doc, because I know how it is. The hospitalists just want to fix the acute problem and get you out and let the primary worry about everything. But when
Yeah.
you say, hey, look, we can make some changes here that maybe can help you not shoot as much insulin, or maybe give you a better lifestyle where your heart failure is better, things like that, rather than saying, here's a pill, here's a pill, here's your pill, see you tomorrow, right? Because I know I've seen hospitalists, they don't even go in the room. They stand in the doorway, talk to the patient for a minute, boom, this huge note comes out, and they're on to the next patient.
Yep. And I think now in hindsight, it makes sense why I loved hospital medicine, because I'm not in a rush with time. I don't have 10 minutes. I have 12 hours to see my panel of patients. So the people, I mean, some people you really want to leave as soon as possible, but some people you really care about and you want to help them, and they're just misinformed, and you try. We can talk about that if you want, but one of my first patients, not really directly, but I was thinking of somebody who's fatty liver disease, and my advice to her in her vulnerable state led to her to avoid transplant down the road, what I learned months later. So these time and moments you spend with these patients, sometimes you don't know what happens, but a lot of times you change their lives.
Yeah, and you're in a unique spot because people are, for the first time on their back, looking up, thinking, "Uh-oh, is there more to life? What am I going up against?" And those words you say at that time can really change lives, right? Because I have people come in and say, "Remember 2 years ago you told me this?" I was like, "No, what did I say? I don't even remember." And they go, "Changed my life," or something you say changes someone's life, and you think, "Wow, I didn't think it was that impactful," right? But quit soda, whatever it is, something,
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
hate the world, be nice to your family, whatever it is, something, those little things, like it sinks in when you're in need.
Sometimes I get random messages just to thank me as about something I said or tweeted about, and they said they followed it and their life has changed. It makes you feel good. I mean, it's not about. I mean, it makes me feel good that I'm not on social media to be on social media. I'm social media to hopefully influence some people. I used to tweet early on, like, I don't like social media. How do I benefit and help people without being on social media?
Yeah, it's a hard thing. I've struggled with that. I don't know if you know, but I've taken a 2-week vacation from Twitter. I said,
Yeah,
look,
your absence is noticeable.
yeah, everyone's fighting and they're doing this stuff. It's like, look, if I can't speak reason, and if I can't speak truth of what I'm seeing, then I don't really love the platform. I really don't love, the censorship, and some good people. I was shocked while I've been gone. They said this person got kicked off, this person got kicked off,
Yeah,
and I was like, wow, this is interesting. They're nice people. They're good, good
it's
of integrity.
yeah.
You think, wow, it's amazing how quick we could be canceled.
You can be canceled, yes. I stay in my lane a lot of times, not to fear, but because I don't want drama. And I'm not
Yeah.
there to be, I mean, I have a lot of opinions about a lot of things, obviously, in politics and things like that. I just keep them to myself. I mean, nobody's really interested anyway. I mean, they follow me for the health stuff. And if somebody's interested, we can have conversations. But
Yeah, I think
every
it's a
time I
hard
try
thing.
to kind of test it out, you get people offended left and right with the slightest things.
Yeah, I've gotten to the habit. I don't go back and look. I tweet something is because if it comes from the heart and I see something that I'm concerned about or want to help someone. But you have to realize at some point you can't save the world. You try to do what you can. That's why I do this podcast, so we could do it in open form. Because there's a lot of people that sound like a jerk on Twitter, but I get them on like Sean Baker, for instance. He's one of the nicest guys. He has a
It's so
huge
nice.
background. And he got taken off Twitter. As a matter of fact, he was one of them. I don't know what he said or what he did or who he offended, but it's one of those things where you say, and these guys have a certain persona for Twitter that is more like, people like that. They like the
Yeah,
disruption.
yeah,
They like people who stand up and are not just say, okay, whatever you say is fine. But you realize some people, if you get into a discussion, if you're totally different religiously or politically, you're not going to convert that people by telling them they're a jerk and fighting with them. It's not going to. They're not saying, oh, this guy's a total jerk. Oh, I want to do what he's doing, right?
yeah, yeah. I love Sean. I mean, he was. I owe a lot to Sean because he, I guess, noticed me very early on. I was tweeting 2 months in, and he invited me his MeatRx podcast last summer. So when I was barely getting into this, he's the nicest guy. I mean, he's no BS guy, so you just don't BS with him, because it's just, if it doesn't make sense, he's gonna call you out on it. So
Then I asked him that. I said, "Why are you so hard on the vegans? You guys are fighting all the time." He said, "Brian, for 2 years I tried. I tried to use science and reason, and sooner or later you just have to say, you know what, the gloves are off. I'm going to fight with you now because I'm tired of dealing with it." And so, I think it can be very divisive, on Twitter. But I think that's one thing I've noticed. You're always a decent, good guy on there, and you're like, we need more people like that. We need to have engagement, even if you disagree. Say, okay, here's why I disagree. Here's my facts. Here's your facts. Here's what I'm saying. Here's what you're saying, and let's have a discussion about it, rather than saying you're wrong and I'm right.
There's always room for kindness. I see no reason to be disrespectful or condescending or just mean. I don't know. It's just not in my idea, in my fiber to be that. You tempt it. Sometimes you get triggered, but if you breathe and before you respond, you won't regret. I've always regretted the immediate responses rather than the ones I sleep on, and they become no issue the next day.
And I think in life, generally, you say that, say, okay, I'm triggered. Let me relax. Let me take a breath. Let me step back. Do I want to engage this person or not? And I heard, someone said, if you wouldn't take advice from someone, don't take criticism from them. Meaning, if they're not a person you're going to be hanging out, it is a positive role. Because you see these guys, they fight with everyone. They say Jason Fung's an idiot or you're an idiot, and they have 2 followers or 5 followers. Like,
yeah, exactly.
There's a reason you have 2 or 5 followers, right? Because you're just out trolling and causing trouble. So I think the more of us can step back and say, okay, I'm not going to engage with negativity. I think you see it on all platforms. Every platform I hear of says there's negativity. We see someone lose 100 pounds. They go, look, you have loose skin. It's like, why would you say that? Like, they just lost 100 pounds and they've accomplished a lot, and they're already self-conscious and they're sharing their journey. And then you critique them.
Yeah, don't beat them. Like, if they're vulnerable, they're showing vulnerability. Don't just beat them down. Just support them and good job and encourage them.
Yeah, and I think that's what you do in the hospital too. And I've been hearing that too, where people, and I get the argument, but people say, well, it's because you're overweight. It's this is why you got all this. It's because you smoke, you got lung cancer. It's because you did this. Instead of saying, hey, you're in the situation you're in, what can we do today? Right? How can we make changes today? Not what you did 2 years ago or 15 or 20 years ago.
And that was a big shift in me. It's like, I can talk about what happened before all I want, but at the end of the day, I can't change the past. So what can you do now? What's your next meal? What's your next thing? What caused it? What can you do about it? So that's been a huge help to kind of reorient people, because they get overwhelmed with how much they need to do.
Yeah. So personally, what did you do? Where did you lean for your strength when your sister passed away, or when you went through hard times, when you're the new kid in America? Like, what did you lean on? Was it your intellect? Was it friends or religion? What got you through, man?
I lean on denial and bottling things up. What do you do? I was 21 and about to start medical. So the hardest part is she died December 8th. I had an interview with Stony Brook December 9th.
Wow.
And I was already desperate. Look, I had applied to 30 medical schools. I only did like downstate. The reason I was getting these because I was state residents. I was giving preference to state schools. So soon, the State University of New York, I went to downstate. That was Stony Brook, the next one, and it was December 9th. And I didn't know what to do. I just kind of bottled it up and just went to the interview. It's a blur. I don't remember much of that day, except I was just kind of a zombie. My brother flew to Lebanon for the funeral, and I was going to do that, but had to make a choice. Yes, she died, but also medical school, and if I don't make it, I only have biology major. I'm not going to just teach in high school if I don't. I didn't have plan B. I just was very overwhelmed. So I guess really sometimes denial helps you survive. The problem is if you never process it and it comes back to you, which it did. So I did that. Then I had Buffalo medical, interview, and I was able at least to know enough to postpone that. I told them, look, this happened. I need a few months, and they were very kind to, postpone it to April, from December to April. And I ended up liking, and they saw me as a person, not as a score. And a lot of things worked well with Buffalo. But right before that, in March, I thought I was fine because I haven't cried, I haven't really processed things. I just kind of be there for my parents. I spent a month in Lebanon just to kind of be with them, so it was a lot of making sure they're okay, and I didn't pay attention to myself. A friend of mine, sorry, a relative of mine came to New York City, and then I showed her around. We just went touring New York City stuff, subway, different museums, and things like that. And that night, I woke up. I thought I was dying. Um, I was shaking, heart pounding. I literally was scared to death. So she doesn't drive, and I mean she doesn't have a license. But I took her. Look, you gotta drive me. I can't. I gotta go to the hospital. I think I'm dying. So they took me there. She took me there. I didn't even wake up my brother because I didn't want him to worry. And I ended up having a panic attack, which I didn't know it was a panic attack at the time. I thought it was dying. When they told me that, it made perfect sense. So I took her around every place. I took my sister 6 months before because my sister
Wow.
was visiting in the U.S. So that was the time where I mean, it's she's 23. She's visiting the U.S. Spent the summer here with my younger sister too, and then I showed them around. So I think this came subconsciously, just kind of showed up and blew up as a panic attack. Never happened again since I realized that I recognized the connection. So, but that was scary, and you
Wow.
know, um, uh, you know, I don't know. I
Huh.
mean, it was hard,
Yeah, because
but
it
it
was
took
triggering
years to
stuff in your
process.
brain, and it brought back thinking, oh, like she was just here and we went through like all the
Yeah,
same things. And
yeah.
yeah, it's
I still have the
amazing.
pictures. I mean, things were still fresh. It hasn't been 6 months since I saw her last, and
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you this is a crazy story, but it happened to me in residency. I had a patient come in, severe chest pain, substernal chest pain, classic heart attack stuff. And I'm looking at her EKG, everything looks good. They were gonna rush her down to the cath lab. And I grabbed her old chart and was looking at it. I'm like, a year ago today, she was here with the same thing. And so I started talking to her. I said, what's your life like? And she's a cleaning lady. She drags stuff up and downstairs. She works all the time, never has chest pain ever, anytime. A year ago today, she had the same chest pain. So I said, what's significant about this day for you? And she thought about it. She started crying. She says, 2 years ago today, my son died, right? Her chest pain went away. Everything got better. And she realized, like, this is a broken heart, really. She was so, that emotional stuff. It feels like you were saying, that panic attack, you feel like you're going to die. And it's really scary, especially if you've never had one before.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden you have it out of the blue. You think, oh, I'm dying. Something's wrong. And that sense of dread and fear and loathing and all that stuff.
I mean, it's a terrible feeling. The irony and the coincidence, today is my sister's birthday. Like by chance,
Wow.
uh, she would have been 41.
Wow,
So
what an honor to her,
yeah, I
even
mean,
talk about
I just
this.
realized this yesterday. I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna talk about life, and it's my sister's late sister's birthday. So that's kind of sweet. So
Yeah, so what do you see now, like in the hospital? What do you see that, you know, people are like lack of fear, lack of hope or fear or um, just no will? What are you seeing in the hospital these days with COVID in this setting? And
I think people are numb. They're depressed. They're anxious. They're kind of lost a sense of they don't have joy in life. I mean, joy not like happy and giddy, like joy, like just being content. And you just see people sick and miserable. I mean, I'm skewed in my views because I see the sickest of the sick, but all we do is expensive procedures, and sometimes all they want is somebody to sit with them and talk about stuff. So sometimes I do that when I feel like there's nothing else I can offer. There's so much I can do. Um, People need hope. They need love. I mean, hugs. The people have been deprived of hugs because of COVID, and visitors. The hardest thing this past year was having. I come and go. It's easy for me, but patients who are stuck there for weeks when their family members are not allowed in to visit unless they're dying, which what's the point by then. So
yeah, that's a
I don't know.
huge thing that most people outside don't understand. You're doing one thing in the name of safety, but I'm telling you, a lot of my patients have told me it was the most devastating thing being in the hospital or having to drop their husband or wife off and they say, sorry, you can't come in. They're having a heart attack or they're having a problem and you can't be there for them. You can't support them. and obviously people talk about peeking through the window, but if you're on the 12th floor, you're not gonna be peeking through the window, and so that's all really that disconnect that we've seen. And I think from my standpoint, seeing that, and we called this early on, Tro and I called on the podcast, even saying, gosh, we're seeing people depressed, anxious, they're not doing bingo anymore. They're not going to the bridge club. They're not playing,
Yeah.
lawn bowling, whatever you do, when you get separated from all that, it's really a really a tough time.
And they get angry and they lash at you, and then if you're not smart, you think they're attacking you, where they're just kind of projecting their own anger and things like that on us. So I as much as possible, when I was seeing the COVID patients, even the consultants don't go in. They do like phone conversations with them. I was me and the nurse, or the hospitals and the nurse are the only ones going in. So I would take my phone and FaceTime and just call their family members, just so they can see each other. Sometimes just a few things, little things I can do for them.
Yeah, just so they can talk and they can
Yeah.
have some connection. I think that human connection, like you said, a hug, put your hand on someone's shoulder, you can't do that remotely. And I think that's what happened is a lot of people were scared. What I see, and it's kind of crazy, but it was good for my business because they would call their doctors. The doctors would say, just go to the ER. Like they wouldn't even see them. They wouldn't do a COVID test. They would say, just go to the ER. And the ERs are flooded. They're afraid to go to the ER. They're not feeling well. So then all of a sudden you have a situation where people get more and more sick at home because they were afraid to go in.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that we're seeing now, and the results of that. And a lot of people are just so frustrated by the system. They say, I can't see my doctor. No one's helping me, and I'm not feeling well, and I don't know what to do. And it was a scary feeling for people because they felt hung out to dry, that no one really cared.
It's very hard, and I don't know how I feel about it, because deep down I know the authorities and the hospital administration, they're really, in their mind, they're doing the best they can. And when I see it like that, it's hard. I get torn because I see it as a wrong approach, but I know they're doing what they think is right to help, and then the consequences. So it's
It's
not a
like the
fun.
food pyramid, right? It's like the
Yeah,
food pyramid. I look at the
exactly.
same
It's
way.
not a
It's like,
fun place. It's hard to get angry when you see both sides and know what's going on, understand where they're coming from. That's why I never kind of take things personally, because I know if I think and before I react, most people don't mean harm. They're just really, as dumb as they may sound in their policies and all things like that, they're really trying to make things better. At least I may be naive, but that's my belief about the whole system.
yeah, I think so too. They're saying, hey, look, we can't let this spread. I get it. I totally get the logic, and you're trying to do what you can. Nonetheless, we get lost in the shuffle, and it's hard when you're stuck there and you don't have connection. I think that, especially when you're scared and stressful, that's why someone like you coming in, just sitting down, being a human being, people don't realize how important that is. And there's a lot of systems where they have 8 minutes with that patient, right?
Yeah.
They have 8 minutes with that patient. And what are you going to talk about? Their stress and their wife left them, or, I mean, it's hard because even if they know metabolic disease, even if they know this stuff, they don't have time to really teach. That's why I left the system, because I said I can't sit there. But now I can spend an hour with the patient, sit there and explain it and go through every detail and get them back on track so that they don't need me anymore because they get it.
Plus, you're the human being too. As a doctor, you're stressed, you're anxious, there's a lot on your shoulders too. So you're probably not in the mental capacity to even sit and talk. You want somebody to talk to yourself.
Yeah, and when you're busy, as I was working 14, 16-hour days a lot of days, and so when you're that busy, someone comes in and goes, Dr. Oz says this, you're like, oh gosh, man,
Like, I don't
this
care.
is gonna be something that's gone in a week. I'm not learning it. And then I know the mindset of when the keto came and low carb, and these people are talking about, they go, this crazy stuff, it'll be gone in a week. Everyone said that. It'll be in a year from now, we won't be talking about that was 5 years ago or 10 years ago now or whatever. But when it's working, it stays. It's not a fad anymore. And so you start saying, well, let's look at this medically. And I'm shocked at how many medical problems are getting better. Not even,
It's a fad for people who
it's
haven't
amazing.
tried it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fad that's been going on since the 17, 1800s or something like that with these guys, the old docs. That's why I had all these old texts. I go, look, here's how they treated diabetes. Go ahead and read it for yourself. We changed. They didn't change. The science didn't change, but our drugs changed and our approach changed, because we're just looking at the sugar, right? So I think a lot of times we get down a path and we just don't look back and we don't question, saying, wait, is this working? Like when you think about it logically, you think, the sliding scale insulin, how many carbs are you taking? That's how much insulin we gave you. So, okay, we don't need as many carbs, we need less insulin, right? It's mind blowing that in the hospital, especially in the hospital, because they have everyone on orange juice and cereal and toast. So you see what they're
Oh my
eating, and you
God.
think, oh my gosh, they're diabetic. We're trying to get their sugars under control, and you're giving them sugar in their veins, and you're giving them sugar through their mouth, and they well, and then we give them
That's
more
one of
insulin. It doesn't make sense ever.
Yeah,
It
that's
never
one of
made
the
sense.
few things I can never get used to it. I get angry every time. I get really like frustrated, and it's like, and even patients who non-compliant, if you call them, they know that like this is more sugar than I eat at home. It's like, and they end up needing more insulin in the hospital. But the thing is, they don't even have options. You try, but there is no option on the menu. Like everything is breaded or sodas and 1% milk and juices. I mean, the diabetic tray is like,
Jello's everywhere, right? That's their yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
it's amazing. And when you see it, think, gosh, these patients are getting sicker. They're here with an amputation or threatened amputation. They're giving pure sugar the whole time. You're giving them every reason or post-op. Number one cause of infection is high sugar levels. You have to give them sugar. It's like, well, why don't we switch that? Even now, I'm sure you see that, but I've had a couple of patients going for knee replacements and they give them this high sugar.
they always
Uh,
do that. Surgeons do that. D5 dextrose, 5% dextrose with some salt, saline, or something like that.
Yeah, and they're
Uh,
giving and then they consult and say, why the patient sugar so high? And well, turn off the IV and see what happens. Oh, it
yeah.
normalized. Oh, okay. It's just
Like, why did you put them on him? Well, they're NPO. They're without food after midnight. Or like, you don't eat when you sleep, so just you don't have to give them anything. You just
yeah, you're not even when you're sleeping. Yeah, exactly. Like people don't understand that concept of oh, if you're
or
sleeping,
just
you don't
give
need.
them saline without the sugar. Why do you have to? I mean, it's knee-jerk reflex. It's residence. It's what they do. That's
It's
what
just
they're
what you've
taught.
always done. It just gets passed down and passed
I used
down
to
and
do
passed
it.
down. Yeah, we all did. Everyone did it. It's just the way it was. Everyone said, okay, you do this, this, this. Here's the orders. They would just tell you, here's what you order. It's already on the sheet. Boom, there you go. Now it's electronic, so it's probably just automatically in there, right?
Yeah, you don't even think about it. Just a click a button and then the the, the whole order set populates.
Yeah. So hey, man, in your estimation, like, what's life's best medicine for you? Since you're on
Uh,
my podcast, man, I get asked you these
yes,
kind of
yes.
things. Like when you sit
Really,
back and say, "Hey, where do I find my peace? What gives me joy?" Those kind of things.
really, I think kindness goes back to kindness for me. Just be kind and help others. We every time we try to be self-centered and think about yourself, you always problems appear bigger than they are. But when you start helping others, you find joy. At least I find joy, and my problems become much smaller. There's always somebody worse than you out there, and then just be grateful. Life we will die just one day, and just let that decide how you spend your days and what you worry about, and stuff like that. So hope and kindness.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you, man. Hope and having something to lean on. I think we have to have something to lean on in the hard times because I think we have a different perspective, maybe because we've seen it all. We've been there in the ICU and watched people die terrible deaths. We've seen people survive that probably shouldn't have survived, and they still do. And you look and see, I learned a lot from my patients of where, when they're at the end of the rope, how are they? Are they fearful and stressed out and worried, or they say, I'm all good. And I've come across a lot of people saying, I'm all good. Don't worry, doc. I'm
Yeah,
good. I'm in a good place. Had a great life. Everything's fantastic. It's my time. I'm okay with that because what we have to realize, everyone, is no matter how great technology is, that day will come. It will come. So you go, okay, how much of an impact can I leave before where people say, gosh, they helped me? And I think, what you're seeing, Eli, is really important because people who are focused, as a matter of fact, just yesterday I had a conversation with a young guy. He's probably a multimillionaire by now, and he works incessantly. He's up till 3 a.m, gets up at 5. I'm like, why are you doing it, man? And we had a good conversation, but in his mind, he goes, I go, you just bought the most expensive gym ever. You don't use it because you don't have time. You don't take your wife out to dinner and she's lonely. You don't do this and you don't do this, but you're going to have a lot of money in the bank for what?
that's fair.
Because you're going to be the guy. Trust me, I just got back from vacation. They get old and they can't move because they've been sitting around all day. They go on a vacation, they can't do anything. They can't go for a hike. They can't go do stuff. It's like, you don't want to be that guy. Just start doing stuff now. You're young enough where you can start, where you can have some kind of quality of life.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons I started cutting down on hospital medicine. give myself a pay cut just to kind of focus on things more, life, day to day, and focus on some metabolic stuff, help people. My best day is when I look at the CGM of one of my clients who's been diabetic for 15 years, and within 2 weeks she's like flatline, and she's angry and thankful every day. It's like, nobody told me. It's like, really, they didn't know. They really thought that's what it was. So that's much more valuable to me than 12 hours in the hospital.
Yeah, when you see that, when you see those sugars getting better, and I see it, one of my patients, she's just coming down to insulin every week. We're lowering her dose every week, and she's so happy. And her old doctor said, "You will never come off insulin. Don't even think about it. Like, it will never happen." I said, "Why not? Let's try. Let's see. Maybe it won't. Maybe it will. Let's see what happens." And so, just to give that people that little bit of hope to say, "Let's try this. Let's put some muscle mass on you and see what happens." Right. So then they start realizing the importance of all this stuff. And if you want to prevent it, you do these things before it happens. So it's easier to not blow up your engines, easier to change your oil and get tune-ups every once in a while than to wait till you blow up your engine. I think that's where medicine's gone, where we wait till everyone blows up their engine. You do miracles in the hospital. We have so much technology, but it's like, well, it would be nice if we didn't have to use that technology so much.
It's not good for business though, because the hospital loves business. So it's a different mindset. Sometimes when people in the hospital administration say, not malintention, but they're saying, "Oh, we're busy. It's a good thing." Because for business, I know they don't mean well, but it sounds really horrible on a human level that we're happy that the hospital is full, because it's money generating, whether stents or open heart surgeries or amputations or all that stuff. So I'm starting to feel out of place in the hospital for sure. So.
Yeah, it's hard when you say gosh, and I think that's what I was seeing. I would see patients say, "This is preventable. This guy's got these ulcers. He's getting his toes amputated, his feet amputated." It's like, once we step back 20 years and change things, right? We changed things back then. We could have prevented this. Like, you play the clock backwards and you start looking, and that's why I started getting frustrated with our management, because the way I saw it was, if you're diabetic and the doctor said, and I'm telling you, this happens all the time, the endocrinologist says, tell Dr. Lenskis to go pound sand. Just eat whatever you want. I'll give you more insulin. And I'm the nice guy. But then you realize the insulin, the sugar is killing people. And then 15 years later, you can't feel your feet. And then you're going blind and all these other things happen. Your kidneys are failing. And the weight gain and your joints hurt and your back hurts and you're miserable and you're on doctor appointment after that. That's your social life. And then you realize, gosh darn it, if you didn't do that, you wouldn't need the extra insulin. If you just change your lifestyle, you can prevent these things. So I started to see my diabetic patients as a ship that was sailing out to sea with a bunch of holes in the side of the boat. Like, it's going out, and it's not, I'm not going on that boat with you anymore. I can't go there anymore. I can't watch you decompensate
Why
and
do they
have heart
do that?
attacks and strokes.
I never understood it. Like, if you knew the physiology, why would they still do that? My excuse to them is they're human beings. They don't want to do it themselves. They don't want to change, so they don't want to. They project.
That's part of it. That's part of it. And two, you don't want to be the parent who says, "Look, you have to eat your vegetables. You have to, right? You can have dessert all day long, right? Someone has to be that parent that says, "Look, this isn't a good idea, and here's why." Instead of saying, "I can give you a pill, I can give you a pill," that will help those things. And I think that's what it is people have lost hope. They say, once I get diabetes, you're never going to come off insulin. I was told that over and over again. And so what happens is, a lot of these things that we do in medicine, they've just been passed down from generation to generation, and we believe those to be true, instead of saying, "Hey, wait, let's step back and reassess." That's why Jason Fung blew me out of the water, because I'm saying he's seeing it a totally different way. Because all I'm looking at is the sugar. I never even checked an insulin until I heard of him, ever. Him and Ivor Cummins are two guys who had a huge impact on me, because I was like, let me look at this and see if they're crazy. And I was double checking them and saying, oh my gosh, all of my patients who had major coronary disease or multiple stents, bypass surgery, all of them had high insulin levels, every single one of them. And I was like, wow, I never heard that before, right? And even if they're not diabetic and everything else looks okay. So these are the kind of things you see and you think, wow, that we really have to reassess where we're at. And I think in medicine, with COVID, with everything we do, we have to step back and say, okay, what's working, what's not working, right? From the frontline doctors like you who are seeing it, saying, this is what I'm seeing, this is what's working. Because when you go back, people like, I don't know if you know who Pierre Corey is. He's a intensivist, and he was saying, look, steroids are working for these people. And he was passionately saying this and yelling from the rooftops. And everyone said, this guy's crazy. It's going to hurt the immune function. Lo and behold, that's the standard of care now, and because it was an inflammatory process, right? Because that's why the obese and diabetic and people who are metabolically sick have a ton of inflammation. So when we saw the physiology and he said, this is what's happening, we want a randomized controlled trial. Well, it's working. I've saved like 50. None of my people are going on the ventilator, right? And so you
Yeah,
start thinking that and you think, wow, this is incredible.
yeah, I lived through the whole transition where we didn't do anything, and then they tried hydroxychloroquine, and they stopped doing that, and they tried. I mean, eventually it evolved, and now they do the steroids. I mean, it's been over a year since they do that, but definitely, um, they're winging it on the go too. They keep changing things, so they're
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, we get better and better. We figure things out, so that's the good news. Docs, eventually we have to get hit over the head a lot, and then we'll change what we're doing. So,
yeah,
and it's great hearing your story of seeing patients get better and all that. So transitioning out, I want people to know about you because people call me from Texas and they go, okay, will you come to Texas? I'm like, I don't have a license in Texas, but guess what? I know someone who does.
yes, and I do it remotely, so you don't have to come to my office if they want that.
Yeah, tell them about that. How do people get in touch with you and hear more
Uh,
about you and track you down on Twitter and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Elie Jarrouge MD, and I'm on Instagram, Elie_Jarrouge. And I have a website, metabolichealthmd.com. I'm easy to reach, I'm friendly, I respond. I'm licensed in Texas, so if you want to come off medications or have somebody like that, I can coach you out of medications. I don't have yet primary care set up, but more like intensive kind of undo things. And then I do coaching anywhere for weight loss or anything they want, really. So
Yeah, it's awesome. And I think people need someone like you who's supportive and caring and said, look, I'm in your corner. Let me help you out. Let me show you what I've learned. And when you can prevent them, and and the thing is, sometimes you don't get as much glory out of this because you're not saving their life when they're, on their last breath, but you're saying, let's change your tires now before you get a blowout on the freeway. Right.
and
Because
I've seen it. I've had so many hospice conversations that I just don't want to have them again because of things that I could have prevented 20, 30 years before. So, I mean, I've had that spectrum of seeing both extremes. That's why I'm so passionate about not getting there or reversing it when it's early enough.
yeah, it's awesome. We need more docs like you. And that's why I want to give you a platform so people know where to find you, help you get
Thank you.
out there. And there's going to be other young docs who say, let me look at these two old dudes. I'm older than you, man, but older docs and see what they're doing and what they've learned over the years. And let me steer towards that. So I'm seeing more docs having interest in the type of medicine I'm doing because they'll come in and they'll look and they'll laugh and say, I've never seen someone taken off insulin. This is pretty crazy. Like how's this happen? It's like a miracle, but it's not. Everyone's doing the same. Tro's doing the same miracles in New York, and we have Jason doing it in Canada. I mean, people are doing it all around the world. And so you start realizing, wow, this is pretty cool, and give people hope again. Let them step up and not be just have their social visits be doctors. Let it be
It's
friends and
exciting
family.
every time. I'm like a kid. Every time I stop in the drug, it's like, yes. So
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Like Dr. Unwin says, the angels sing every time you stop a drug, and I feel that way. I feel that it's like, wow, you don't need that anymore. What? They told me I have it the rest of my life. Well, your blood pressure is normal. Let's take you off and see what happens. So yeah, it's exciting stuff. So again, spell your last name for people so they can track you down.
yes. So first name Elie, Elie. Last name Jarrouge, Jarrouge.
Yeah. All right, Doc. Well, welcome, man. It's great to have you on Life's
Thank you,
Best
Brian, for
Medicine,
having
and
me. You're doing great.
I'm spoiled because I get you on low carb MD next, so we get another hour to chit chat. So
Awesome.
it's great. I wanted people to get a flavor of who you are and what
Thank you. I really
matters.
appreciate the
And
opportunity. And I love your podcast. I love that things are more human than technical. So
thanks, man. I love it too. I mean, that's why we go into medicine. That's why we do what we do. To have that. We all went into medicine. I'm telling you, people don't be mad at your doctor. They went into medicine to help you. They went in there to
yeah.
help people, and you get into the system and you realize it just spits, chews them up and spits them out. It's really a hard system that your doctor is in a lot of times. So, don't be upset because I hear a lot of people say negative things about their doctors, and it's like, you know what, they're trying to do their best and they're just
Yeah.
overwhelmed and they're trying to, it's like a sinking ship and they're trying to fill all the holes and they can't. They don't have time to, and it's an overwhelming thing. So I feel for these docs, I really do, and hopefully
Yeah.
over time more of them kind of say, let me step back and see what else I can do to help people. And
I have to step
so
out of the system for sure.
yeah, and that's why it's so great. But I'm telling you, nothing can replace the human touch or empathy and caring for a patient. There's nothing like that. No drug is going to fill that gap, and no amount of efficiency. We become more efficient. We become more computerized, and so a lot of times the doctor has their back turned to the patient, and they're they're just saying, typing and making a note because we're there for the note rather than the patient. So if you're a doc listening out there, you know what I'm saying. So I hope that you say, let me change what I'm doing. Let me step back from this and have the courage sometimes to step outside the system and do what you can to help that patient, because there's nothing more rewarding. And always remember why you went to med school and what your goals are. So,
Absolutely. It's
Doc,
scary, but it's all worth it.
we have another podcast to do, so we got to go. But everyone, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. There's a lot of wisdom in this one, so you're gonna want to listen back again. So, Eli, great having you, man, and we get to spend another hour together. We'll grab
Great.
some
Looking
coffee and
forward
make
to
that
it.
happen.
Thank you, Brian.
Hey everyone, I wanted to let you know about an upcoming conference that really had a huge impact on me, that's helped me on my journey and helped me to really understand metabolic health and what we're doing to make people healthier. And so I have my friend Doug Reynolds, who's the boss, who's putting on this conference. So Doug, tell us about the conferences coming up, Low Carb USA, San Diego. I love it because it's right next to my house and I get to sleep in my own bed and come, but maybe I get to stay in a hotel this time. I don't know. And I get to speak. So man, it's awesome that we get to all meet up together and build community. We all know how important that is. So Doug, welcome. Tell people about what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Brian. It's really exciting to be able to do it in person again. I think there's so many people out there that are just clamoring to be able to talk to people again and give someone a hug and just collaborate like has become so predominant in all the other events that we've done before this COVID thing hit. One of the things that's come up since when COVID hit, we couldn't do it. So then we flipped over and did virtual versions of the San Diego event and the Boca one. And we had a lot of people actually sign up and become a part of that. And so what it has done for us now is make us understand that the live stream component can be very effective for people that can't make it to the event. So this is a proper live event, and I think I want to make this very clear to people that I think they think it's like so many people have asked how many of the talks are going to be virtual and how many are going to be in person, and the answer is every single one is going to be in person. So we will have a live stream component. People will be able to access it via live stream, but all the speakers will be there in person. Anybody that hasn't been able to make it obviously just hasn't made it into the lineup. And I think that's really important, and it's really exciting that we've got all of these people coming out, and some really good names. Gary Taubes has been a stalwart with us. He's like always supported us. The first guy to say, let's do this. You obviously, Rob Sivers, Tro, Tony Hampton, Brett Scher, Dr. Ben, Amy Berger, Diana Rogers. I'm really excited that she's, on the sustainability side. I'm really excited that she's able to make it this time. We've been trying to get her to an event of ours for a while. And this is the first time. Andrea Salcido is a really, really amazing. She did one of the Grand Rounds talks for our SMHP. And she's a gynecologist. We've had a lot of comments from people from the feedback forms and stuff saying that you should get a gynecologist in. So now we have. Michelle Hearn was a potentially Olympic athlete who just like crashed and burned on carbs, and she's a dietitian, and she found keto and eventually basically carnivore, and it's cured her to the extent where she's training for the Olympics again. But she wrote this book called Dietitian's Dilemma, because everything that she'd learned as a dietitian she wasn't doing anymore in order to make herself healthy again. And so it's really cool to have a real dietitian's perspective of the problems that they have. She's basically left that vocation because she just couldn't function in the hospital environment, and that where she was. She was not allowed to speak to people about low carb. And so that's a fascinating story. Dr. Gurpreet Pada, I think you might have even had him on.
Yeah, he's doing amazing stuff with pain management.
He's just one of the most incredible people.
Yeah, amazing.
Marco Cazella, I don't think,
He's a
anybody, at
legend.
least in this one.
Yeah,
He
he's a
is
legend. I
yeah.
worked with him in deprescribing the textbook chapter, and he's phenomenal. And
He is
he's
absolutely.
struggled with metabolic disease, even though he's a long distance runner. And he was able to get soda out of the hospitals he's affiliated with, and that's a huge task.
Yeah.
That's a huge money maker. So yeah, so many great people, and I think the big thing is just being able to sit down. I know. For me, being at Low Carb USA, the first time I was able to sit down and have a cup of coffee with some great leaders that were just there, and they just are there to talk. And so
Yeah.
there's so much great information. Anyone else we need to talk about, Doug?
Well, Steve Finney is the latest addition to the lineup. Been chatting with him for a while now, managed to get him on board. Dave Feldman as well. He wasn't sure if he was going to be able to talk because of this research that he's got going on, that he might not have been able to actually speak in public. Arthur Agatston, I think, is going to be fascinating. I did a podcast interview with him the other day. I didn't even know until very recently, but he's the guy that discovered or defined the calcium score. It's actually known as
his name.
score. Yeah.
And the South Beach diet. He's done so much
Correct.
work. I mean, he's always trying to make people healthy. He's doing a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just great the amount of talent you pulled in.
And we've
it's
got
amazing.
the whole, for those people that know about the SMHP, which is kind of the other hat that I put on, the other organization that I run, that nonprofit, pretty much the entire board of directors for that is going to be at this event, either speaking or at least present. And then, the other committees, we've got the panel of advisors for the clinical guidelines. You're on that panel. It's just, there are so many, it's just going to be so many fascinating conversations that are going to go on over that weekend. I can't wait.
Yeah, and it's just, and you're also bringing a lot of vendors, like Keto Mojo is always there, and a lot of good people.
Yeah.
And so try different products, and there's some great Restore program who's doing some great work through your program and really getting it out to the masses. There's so many great people coming out, so I would highly recommend it. And I worked out a deal with Doug because I want people that, sometimes finance is a issue for people. So I said, Doug, look, my people need a discount, our people need a discount, so what do you work out for us, Doug?
So yeah, we've got it. If you use the code low carb MD, it gives you 20% off and it's not just the ticket. For those people that sign up for the dinners, for those people that require a CME certificate, whatever they add, whatever their purchase is, the total amount, that 20% comes off that total. In the past, when we gave discounts, it came just off the ticket price. But it's not that great a guy. It's actually just that it's easier for me to manage. To take it off the total, but
yeah,
as a result, everyone else
great.
Scores, right? So
that helps too. And then, is that for people who come in person and online also?
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
So whatever is in your cart, basically, that discount comes off the total. And the other thing is, one of the options in the upgrade option. So if you only buy the ticket now, you can upgrade and buy the VIP dinners later if you want to join us. Or you can, if you signed up for the live stream and you wanted to upgrade to in person, because now you realize, hey, everybody's traveling and actually I think I can do this. Then you can still use that code on your upgrade options as well. So you can still get 20% off if you decide later. So if you buy the live stream and later, in beginning of August, you decide you want to actually come in person, you can utilize that code again then for the upgrades, and they'll apply, which doesn't happen for anybody else. So.
And what are the dates?
26th to 29th of August.
Awesome. And it'll be live. And if you want to stay in your hotel, I think, can you live stream it from your computer wherever you're at?
Yeah. So that's the thing, is it didn't used to be like that either, but I think every time we do this, we improve it. So now somebody that's in person has access to the live stream as well. So if they want to watch part of it, in their room or something, they can. We would really prefer that they come down and sit in the audience. But if for some reason that's not possible, they can watch it, or they miss something, they can go back and watch that evening or something. They can, watch a talk that they missed or something like that. And then they get access to those recordings after the event. And then within about 2 weeks, we normally are able to get all the individual videos of the talks populated on that site as well. And they have access to that forever. So
yeah, it's great education. I think being able to, because even being there, I've had times where I want to interview someone or to spend time with someone because they're coming from South Africa or something, and I miss a talk, and I was like, oh shoot, I want to see that one. And so it really does free you up to say, okay, I'll hybrid. You can sit and go down. You can talk to people. You can watch it later that night or on the weekend, because a lot of us are really busy. So that is outstanding. I'm really glad. That's a huge improvement for sure. And and some of those talks you're going to want to watch it a couple of times to make sure you absorb it all, so you don't have to feel like you have to take notes. And Doug hates people taking pictures in the meetings, and because it's distracting, for people behind them. So you'll have access to the talk, the PowerPoints, and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's really huge. So hey, everyone. Thank you. I think this is a huge thing. The reason I had Doug on, we have no financial interests. It's really just because I know the benefit of this and how it can help people trying to live a better life and getting on track. And I know it helped me immensely and changed the course of my life, really. So Doug, thanks for all you're doing and continue to do, and you're making a massive impact. So Low Carb USA San Diego, I would highly recommend everyone come out.
Appreciate that, Brian, and thank you for what you're doing. I mean, it all started at one of our meetings many years ago, but I'm so glad that you made it to that meeting, because you're doing great things now too. Thank you.
Hey, I get some good South African food out of it sometimes, so it's all good. So hey, everyone, hey, thank you for listening, and thank you for your continued support. Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.